Hello there and welcome to Way of Love. I want to continue today to talk about how to overcome fear and anxiety. I know that so many people struggle with insecurity, with doubts, with depression, with all these plethora of negative emotions. And one of the things that gives me tremendous joy is to help people experience some kind of freedom. And in our last video, we talked about adopting a freedom mindset. We specifically talked about how when you know the truth, it makes you free. And if we're not free, that means that we're missing something about the truth. And I think this is a very, very important thing to consider and think about. And so we then begin to ask the question, what is truth? If that's the way to experience freedom, what is truth? And so today, I want to talk about asking big questions to get to that point of truth. And when I talk about asking big questions, I'm specifically referring to the existential questions of life. Like, for example, who am I? I don't know if you ever looked up into the dark night of the sky and looked at the stars and said, who am I to enjoy this incredible experience called life? And you ask the questions about what's my purpose in life? What is God, or who is God? What is the universe? What's my place in it? What's the greater purpose of life? And many of these questions that all of us from time to time will ask. Now, one of the things that I think is important in order to actually begin the process of asking questions, because it takes risks to ask these questions, because embedded into the questions is an element of fear. In other words, most of us already kind of reluctantly get into these questions because we are afraid that somehow or another what we believe, the things that we have been taught, the things that we have learned over the years, will somehow or another come crashing down. And the belief systems that we have gives us a sense of security, which in other words helps us avoid fear. And so especially for religious people, I've found this very much to be the case. Especially fundamentalist religious people are more inclined to avoid these questions. They seem to already think that I know it all. So let me just, and I don't mean that in a sarcastic way that they're know-it-alls, but I'm really talking about that religion has a way to hold us back from experiencing freedom. And we think religion actually is the thing that's going to bring us to truth, but the way I'm going to explain it to you in the next few moments, you begin to realize that actually religion is counterproductive. Now, I'm not talking about spirituality here, because I gotta make the distinction between what is religion and what is spirituality. What does it mean to be religious and what does it mean to be spiritual? Now, the two, of course, overlap. So I'm not suggesting that the two do not overlap, but I'm just gonna make that distinction today because I know it's gonna be a benefit to you to understand how to come to that point of freedom. Now, when I talk about religion, I'm talking about a set of beliefs, a set of ideas and concepts, thoughts that people have had about God, that has now been accumulated into a statement of faith, into a sacred book, into a text, into a way that has been handed down. Like these thoughts have been handed down from one generation to the next. And we were often born into religion, or we received religion at a very early age, or at some point in our life we became religious. We were taught ideas and concepts, which are basically thoughts about God, about existence, about who we are, what's the purpose of life. And so we just accept these things. The moment that we kind of embrace a certain religion, we accept whatever the messengers of those religions are. For example, a pastor, a priest, or something like that. Whatever the case may be, a rabbi or imam, or whatever the case may be, we accept those things that we are taught as facts, as the truth. However, the problem with these things are that they come from the outside. It is someone is telling us something, and it demands and obedience. It demands that we don't disobey what in the name of God has been taught us. So we said this is a good way to live. So if you're a Christian, if you're a Jew, if you're from a Muslim, we have been taught these are the things that you hold true. These are the things that you must obey. These are the things that you must follow. Now, the problem with that is that it also promotes fear within us. It actually activates and triggers fear within us in the sense of that if we are not obedient, if we don't follow the text correctly, if we're somehow or another missing it, then we can expect judgment and we can expect condemnation and we can expect punishment. And so the most severe and the most judgmental, the most fundamentalist of religions, therefore actually produce very fearful people. And fearful people are not free, right? Because remember, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. And freedom is freedom from fear, from anxiety, from worries. And actually embedded into many religious ideas and concepts is fear. That's the way we cause and we get people to follow, to become obedient to the way, to what they consider the truth. Now, and as I said, this is very dangerous. That's why religions are very dangerous in that way. Now, spirituality, on the other hand, it is not something that you get from the outside. Spirituality is something that you awaken to within. Spirituality does not deny the existence of God, doesn't deny whatever God is, but it doesn't see it in terms of right and wrong. It doesn't see God in terms of, as a thought, as a bunch of thoughts, a set of collective thoughts that people have put together and formed into a statement of faith. It doesn't see God that way. It more talks about God as an experience, as connecting with the universe, connecting with the whole, connecting with that which was within you, connecting with love. It talks about God as love. Why? Because love is not something that you can describe with words. Love is something that you're aware of, something that you experience. And so that spirituality comes from within, and that leads to peace, it leads to grace, it leads to love, it leads to this internal transformation that then transforms our instincts and our thoughts and our desires. But spirituality is not a thought in itself, although it can become a thought, and often thoughts can lead us to the point of experience this spiritual freedom, but it's not a thought in itself. It's not the end goal, and that's how it differs from religion. So, for example, in my tradition, I came from the Christian tradition, and I used to be one of those who would travel around and basically would get people saved as we talked about it. And the way we did it was I would stand in front sometimes of 10,000, 50,000 people, and I would tell them, give your heart to Jesus, just pray this prayer after me and raise your hand and come to the front. And so people would pray and they would repeat this prayer, and then we would say, you are now saved. What was it? It was them aligning their thoughts with a set of beliefs. In other words, it was religion. Now, I'm not suggesting that religion never can help us, as I said before, because religion can actually guide us to that point of freedom where you begin to experience the freedom within you, when you begin to connect with the divine, when you connect with your true self, that you are a son, and I use the word son as a gender-neutral term here, but you're the son of God, where you are in union with God, when you're in union with all things, when you begin to recognize that the universal presence is in all things. It's in you. And when you awaken to that, that's spirituality. Now, religion can guide you to that point, but most often religion does not. Religion, in fact, what it does, it creates systems that then gets passed down from one generation to the next, and you are told never to question it. You're told never to doubt. You're told never to have any second thoughts about it. And what it does, it creates a dependence on thoughts rather than the experience that you have when you truly have an encounter or an experience with yourself, your true self, your spirit, and with God as love. And that makes a huge, huge difference. And so many times they can be a combination of these things that people are, they're a little bit religious, a little bit spiritual, and they kind of understand both of it. But what I have come to learn is this, that unless you completely understand what you really want is this mystical experience of encountering, becoming aware of divine love, this universal, selfless, unconditional love that is the very source of life, that is the fabric of existence, that is the ground of being, that somehow or another leads to the formation of matter as we see it, that leads to the formation of form as we see it in our own self, that we see in animals and trees and the earth and everything else around us. The very source of that, the very beginning point, is this energy, this source of love that we also call God. I hope this makes sense to you. And when you to know the truth, in other words, then, is not to have intellectual thoughts about it, not to come to some kind of, this is what I believe, this is what I stand for. You are aligning your thoughts with what you've been told you should align yourself with. But instead, it is asking questions and when I say asking questions, why it's so important to ask questions, because asking questions actually helps you be free from this need to just accept what other people have told you beforehand. For example, I think most people, and as I said, I come from the Christian background, and most people, when they read the Bible, they read it as a manual, as a constitution, something that you follow. Just obey. I'm a person of the Word. I stand on the Word. Well, what that means is people stand on whatever interpretation of the Bible they have, whatever way they see the Bible. That's really what it means, because no one actually follows everything in the Bible. It's just not true. And even the fundamentalists don't, because it's impossible, because it has so many different variations and so many different ways of talking about things. It even talks about God in many different ways. And we have to understand the Bible was written over a period of 2,000 years by some 40 different authors who lived at different times in various locations. And we know how much 2,000 years have changed. We know how much the last 20 years have changed, and how much the last 100 years have changed. Can you imagine a book that was written over 2,000 years and how many changes the people went through? So in the beginning, they presented God as quite angry, quite hostile, quite, in fact, worse than some of the narcissists I know. In fact, in the book of Numbers, I just give you this few couple examples. In book of Numbers, which is in the beginning part of the Bible, it says that God said to the Israelites, kill all the Midianites, every one of them, male, female, babies, children, everyone, even their livestock. But there was one exception that God gave them. Make sure you don't kill the virgin young women. Now, why would you think God would say something like that? That makes no sense to me. We understand why. If you understand the human psychology, and if you understand that men were involved in this process, we understand why. Because it was a way, man wanted these virgin women for themselves. So what was that? It was a projection of man back in those days unto God of themselves. In other words, they projected themselves unto God. And that's what they thought. That's how they saw God. And then in other place, we see that in 1 Samuel, it talks about how David was taking the survey and he did it the wrong way. And God swallowed up, or Jehovah, I should say, Yahweh, swallowed up 70,000 people. But then a few 100 years later in the book of Chronicles, they retell this story. And now it is no longer God who said that, but it was Satan. And so the point that I'm making here is you will see that the Bible is a progression of thought. It's leading people to some place. And then we see Jesus come with a different message of love and grace. And even when he quotes the Old Testament, he actually butchers it and takes it out of context, because his view of God was that God was love. His Father he has a relationship. He talks about his Father. He talks about Spirit, this invisible force, this force of the universe is that he called Father. That is the originator, the beginning of things, the source of being, and that essence is love. So at the end of the Bible, it talks about God as love. There's a complete shift. What was it that taking place? They began to ask questions. They asked big questions. And the more they learned from science, the more they learned about human, the way humans are, the more they begin to understand the concept of humanity, and the more they grew in intelligence, in union, and the more they understood the way the world works, the more compassionate, loving, and caring and forgiving they became. And their view of God changed. So it almost seems like that they became more spiritual. In other words, they refused to stay the same they were. So when I look at, and I think I can speak today with some liberty because I came out of the evangelical Christianity. And when I look at evangelical Christianity today, I'm kind of troubled by it because it stays stuck in old ways of doing things. And it does it, and it says, this is the way it is. Just believe, just trust. And it never gives people the opportunity to ask questions. It just says, just believe, just stand for this. This is the way it is. And what it creates in people is more fear that actually damages the brain. So they have actually done studies on people who are very strong fundamentalists, and they have found that their brains have been damaged by fear, where they are less aware and conscious of love in their life, where they're less compassionate and less caring. So we see this trend, even evangelical Christianity. We're so much talking about rights, my rights, and we need to have this, and this is what God wants to do, and this is what's happening. And, we talk about the issues that we like, but then we are not caring about the immigrants at the border. We just dismiss that. We just even consider that as something that's very important. A lot of Christians are like that. We dismiss any care for the people who are homeless, for the people who have nothing, for the people who cannot afford medical care and medical insurance. We are very quick to just judge and not be caring enough for people like that. Why? Because religion has caused us to move away from God, where we're not aware of this spiritual experience, which is based on love and grace and peace. So the point that I'm making is this: whatever religion you're part of, whether this is Muslim religion, the Jewish religion, or Christianity, or Buddhism, whatever it is, if it doesn't lead you to a place of compassion, if it doesn't lead you to a place of love, you will never experience freedom. So if you are struggling in your life right now with this plethora of negative emotions, with all kinds of fear, with all kinds of toxic emotions, and you're wondering why, you said, I've embraced my faith. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm obedient. I'm following. I'm going to my place of worship. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. And still, I am struggling. I may not want to admit it to my friends. I'm hiding behind a mask, my religious mask, but deep inside, I am struggling. And you say, why am I struggling? If that is you, I would suggest to you that your faith is nothing more than a religion. It's a set of thoughts. It's a set of ideas. It's a concept that has been passed down, and you have not asked the big questions. So my advice for you is to begin to ask the big questions in the search of truth, and say, as I talked about last time, just simply say, whether you are part of the Christian tradition, whatever tradition you're part of, even if you're not even if you're an atheist, an agnostic, just say, I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth that makes me free. And what I would suggest to you, that if you think you found the truth, but embedded into what you have found is an element of fear, is something that often brings you anxiety and worry, then it is not the truth. And my experience, and you take it for whatever it's worth, my experience is that the more you just become aware of this presence within you, the more you awaken to this divine presence within you that permeates with love, the more freedom you will experience. For me, it began in 2006 when I began to meditate. I was dealing with cluster headaches, and I didn't know how to be free. I was dealing with all kinds of different emotions, guilt, shame, anger. I was upset with people who had done me wrong. I had all these different emotions, and they were all rooted in fear. All negative emotions are rooted in fear. And I did everything I knew how to be free, but one day I just began to meditate on love. And for me as a Christian, it was the love that I saw on the cross. And but the point was this: the more I became aware of this love, the more I became aware of this truth that was beyond concepts and ideas and definitions and labels, beyond the Christian label, beyond this and that label. It was something that was much grander, something that was much bigger. It was this place of awareness, of freedom within, that you are, as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. As the Buddhists say, it's a place of enlightenment. As the Hindus say, it's a place of enlightenment. It's transformation. It's that which happens within you when you just become aware of this presence. And when you ask big questions, when you dare, when you take the risk of asking big questions, I guarantee you that at some point it will bring you to this level of freedom that will so much change your life. Now, it doesn't mean that you dismiss everything that you have learned, and because it's a roadmap. There are a lot of good things in religions that brings you to this place. But don't, my point is this, don't make the religious ideas and traditions and the concepts into the truth. They are like a roadmap, a map to get to there, but they're not the truth in itself. The truth itself is the bliss and the happiness and the joy and the peace and the grace that you feel when you become aware of this presence within you. Now, I call this the way of love. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please share with your friends, subscribe to this channel. I look forward to talking more with you next week again. Thank you.